Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Rhody Care's Basic Needs Insecurity webinar. And the webinar today is hosted by the URI Parents Council in partnership with Student Support and Advocacy Services. My name is Mary Gervais, and I am a member of the URI Parents Council. I have two children. Well, one has graduated. My daughter was a nursing student who graduated in 2020. And my son will graduate in 2023. He is in a 5-year program, which is International Business with Supply Chain and the flagship Chinese program. This is his last year on campus, and next year he will be in Taiwan all year. You may be wondering, well, what is the URI Parents Council? The Parents Council actually started 4 years ago. I was one of the founding parents on it, and it's a volunteer leadership group with the University of Rhode Island that more deeply connects parents with the leadership at the university, and it truly does enhance the student experience. It serves as a connection for, you can use your time and expertise to get involved in activities. It furthers the university's vision to better serve all students. And really, it's parental involvement, engagement, and there is philanthropic support. And you can get involved on, based on your availability and interest. My husband and I both are members, and I just wanted to give you a little idea of what we have done. We both have been part of Career Day Every Day, where I'm an entrepreneur and he's in human resources and diversity. And he also brought in, helped the university set up mock interviews for students to practice. I actually also have lectured on entrepreneurship in a few of the classes there. And another wonderful thing that has come out of the Parents Council for me is I found 2 interns for my business, which I love working with the students. And also it's just a great networking group. I mean, it's a great way to meet people. The community is excellent. And I just have loved getting to know everyone at URI on a deeper level. So with that, I want to go through a few housekeeping. This session is being recorded. If you do have any questions, please type them in the chat and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. And with that, it is a pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Jackie Springer. And Jackie is the Assistant Dean of Students, and she is with Student Support and Advocacy Services here at URI. Jackie, take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be with you all today. There are a lot of things that we could talk about today, but we're going to spend about the next 15 minutes or so going through some basic terms, just getting a better understanding of what do we mean when we're talking about basic needs security. And then we'll talk specifically about the information at URI. Next slide, please. So again, we'll go through some basic terms. I'll then define the concern. We'll speak about some national data, particularly coming out of 2 areas, which are Real College, which is a part of Temple University. And we'll also talk about the Global Food Initiative that is being completed through the University of California system right now. I'll give you some information that we have from URI's data, looking both at pre-COVID and then some of the services we've provided during that time. We'll talk about how you can help, and then we'll answer some questions. Next slide, please. Thank you. So to start off today, want to go through some basic terms for you. And if you're interested in more information, at the bottom of each slide, you'll notice the reference, particularly as I just mentioned, the Hope Center for College, Community, and Justice was originally founded at the University of Wisconsin, but moved to Temple University a couple of years ago. And so the 3 terms that I want to give overviews of are understanding what we mean when we say basic needs. So we're talking about things like access to nutritious and sufficient food, safe, secure, and adequate housing, a place where you can sleep, study, cook, and shower, We're also talking about access to healthcare, affordable technology and transportation, and then resources for personal hygiene, as well as childcare and related needs. Okay. And so when we're talking about basic need security as a general term, we're referring to whether an ecosystem is in place to ensure that the basic needs that we just described are met. And then the last term that I'll define on this slide is, what does it mean when we see basic needs insecurity, which you might otherwise see listed as BNI? And this is referring to structural characteristic affecting students, not an individual characteristic. It means that the ecosystem that we just referenced is not in place, whether we're talking about at a specific location or if we're talking about our society in general. Next, please. Okay, so over the years, and specifically through the pandemic, the Hope Center for College Community and Justice has shifted a little bit away from just taking a look at things like food and housing, and has really moved towards looking at federal policies and mandates that really need to be changed if we are going to service our college students in a better way. If you are interested in reading this briefing in detail, again, the reference is on the bottom for you. So I'll just read this one quote that comes from the main page of this federal policy priorities for 22. Students' basic need security refers to their ability to cover essential costs of living and going to college beyond just tuition and fees. To open the doors to a college degree or credential, we must first ensure that students' basic needs are met. Unfortunately, federal policy often undermines students' basic need security. We know that financial aid is insufficient for students and leaves them with significant unmet needs. Currently, the federal poverty guidelines used for public benefits and many financial aid programs is severely outdated. Complex bureaucracies and restrictive eligibility rules in public benefits and financial aid programs create substantial administrative burdens on students and their families. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, you see BNI that's listed here. And there are three primary types that we're going to focus on with the research that is discussed today. Food insecurity, which is the term that most folks have learned or have been hearing over these last 5 or so years as it's become a hot topic. And this is referring to limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods, or the ability to acquire those foods in a socially acceptable manner, meaning being able to purchase them or having them gifted to you as opposed to taking them. The most extreme form is often accompanied by physiological sensations of hunger, otherwise known as hunger pains. The second type is housing insecurity, which differs from homelessness, and it involves unaffordable housing, poor housing quality, crowding, or having to move frequently. With regard to college students, you might hear the term couch surfing. Okay, it often includes the broader set of challenges such as the inability to pay one's rent or utilities. And lastly, homelessness, which is the most severe form of housing insecurity, means that a person has no permanent place to live. They might often be residing in a shelter, an automobile, or in an abandoned building or on the street. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we're talking about collegiate basic needs, the way we're going to reference them here has nicely been couched by the University of California at Berkeley, and they have a basic needs security hub, which at the University of Rhode Island, we are working to create a similar version of. And so there are 7 specific ways that we tend to talk about this on our campus, which again mimics how Berkeley speaks about theirs. And those are food security, housing security, financial security, being able to provide some level of crisis resolution, getting a better look and understanding at a student's mental and emotional wellness as it relates to their basic needs, ensuring that students feel safe, both in terms of their access to housing and food, and that all of these sources are accessible to them. So meaning they're literally able to access them and the way in which it's available to them is something that each student, regardless of which campus they're attending, is something that they can access. Next, please. Okay, so you'll see that in reality, we can't really just talk about these 7 areas. And again, this is coming from UC Berkeley. I really like this graphic, which is why I'm sharing it with you all today. We think about the 7 areas that we just talked about on the last slide. It's a lot more complicated. And so you'll see that this has been listed as sort of this interconnected web of things. So around the word basic needs, you see things that we might reference every day in the college arena. Hygiene, housing, can students get to school? What does their mental and physical health look like? Do they have adequate food? Do they have adequate access to finances? And then certainly at this time of the semester in particular, what about sleep? Are they getting sleep? Do they have a place to sleep? Okay, but on the margins of each of these terms, you'll see that there are things that are more complicated, more involved, right? So in order to have a good routine, we have to have an adequate place to sleep, which requires finances, okay? Which requires a student to have good physical and mental health being intact, as an example, okay? Do they have hygienic living conditions, right? Are they able to connect to campus life in a way that they're able to access the resources that we have for students around each of these areas that are seen on the slide here? And certainly given that a lot of you on this call today are parents, is there a routine place for the student to shower or do their laundry, right? Recognizing that not every student has a home to go back to, perhaps where they can ask for assistance in these sorts of ways. So we encourage you just to think about how interconnected some of these concerns and terms are when we're looking at students' access to their basic needs. Next slide, please. Okay, so just going to do some quick overview for you on the research. So again, if you're interested in reading more in depth about the Hope Center and this large real college survey that was done in 2021. On this slide, you'll see what the front of it looks like. And just want to give you, sort of an understanding of how many were served or how many students participated in this survey. So nearly 200,000 students across 202 colleges and universities across 42 states. And you'll see that both 2-year and 4-year institutions were included. Next, please. Okay, so there's a lot on this slide, and I'm not going to read all of it to you, but want you to see here that of the 200,000 students that were included, nearly 3 in 5 experienced 1 or more basic needs insecurity concerns. And at 4-year institutions, that represented nearly 30% of the population. Okay, again, when we're looking nationwide. You see that housing insecurity affected 48% of students, while the most severe form of homelessness affected 14%. And you'll see on the lower left-hand side, some of the data that references the impact of COVID on these students who are struggling with some of their basic needs. Again, there's also a black and white gap in terms of basic needs security. And then on the bottom right-hand side, you will see that we still have an issue with access in terms of students accessing supports on their campuses that can provide some level of emergency aid. Next, please. Okay, so this is again coming out of the University of California system. They have a global food initiative, which I encourage you to take a look at. And when we're looking at who are the individuals that are most impacted, students who are in foster care, those who identify as members of the LGBTQ+ community, a lot of our marginalized students from an ethnic perspective, and then our Pell Grant recipients. In the photo, you'll also see that first-generation students, those who are student parents or perhaps are coming back as older students, students who have international status, either by origin or because they came into the institution as an international student, are out-of-state students who have a larger cost of attendance, and then graduate students as well. Next, please. So here, I'm not going to read these terms or read what these say, but just leaving it here for a few seconds so that you can see some of the questions that were asked around food insecurity. Again, and this is done in 2020. The red represents four-year institutions and the blue represents two-year institutions. Again, I'm going to encourage you to go to the report to read this in more detail, but just wanted you to see it. Next slide, please. Okay, similar questions here, but relative to housing insecurity. And what you will notice is that for the first couple of questions, the housing insecurity listed in the last 30 days was significantly higher among two-year or community college students than it was in four-year schools. But I want you to think about what 12 or 8% of a 17,000 person campus actually looks like. And that's still a significant number of students. Next slide, please. Okay, so this figure comes from that University of California data, and this is what they call their housing insecurity web. Just wanting you all to be able to see how complex of an issue this can be. And so there are some issues that are relating to housing insecurity. A much larger sense of concerns that come from situations that started with housing security, and then ending with the most significant form, which we've identified here as homelessness. And again, this is coming from the Redefining Student Basic Needs for Higher Education document in 2020 from the University of California. Next slide, please. Okay, so quickly through some URI data. Next slide, please. So in 2019, the university conducted its first food security or food insecurity survey. Yes, this was done prior to COVID, and we're not going to do another one until we move through this pandemic a little bit. But at that time, 13% of our students identified themselves as being food insecure. And I want to be clear that the sample largely included first-year students who overall tend to have better access to food. So we acknowledge that our true rate is actually probably a bit higher. Next, please. Okay, so some of the efforts at this institution that we have in place is the URI SNAP Outreach Project, which means that we have students who are on our campus being trained each day to go out into our communities and help those who might be eligible for food stamps. We are looking to turn that internally and make a more robust system in place to help our students. I'm very happy to announce to you all today that beginning in May of 2022, this May, we'll have our first full-time food security outreach coordinator. Her name is Barbara Sweeney, and she's joining us today. And she'll be leading the efforts at the institution to make sure that our students have access to food and that we're doing what needs to be done in order to ensure that all of our students are being helped. Year-round housing and emergency funding are also things that are available to our students, and you'll see that those have an asterisk because we want to ensure that those students are eligible and that we're helping them in the best way possible. The last thing that I'll note on this slide is something that's called Rhody Money Basics. And this is a financial literacy initiative that was launched last year and is a partnership with Westerly Credit Union, available to all students to help them better understand how money works so that they don't get themselves into more dire financial situations than they need to be in. Next slide, please. So this just lists some of our partnerships, and we're really happy to say that our local church, which is St. Peter's by the Sea, is now dropping off items from their community market on Fridays so that our students who lack transportation can actually pick them up on our campus. This means that students can utilize our Roadie Outpost food pantry as well as the community market at this church, and they can shop both of them. You'll see we have some specific partnerships on campus as well. Next slide, please. So this is just a picture of our Roadie Outpost, which is currently housed in the St. Augustine's Church adjacent to campus. Over the summer, we'll be moving this operation to a location near our dining services where there's much more space and we'll be able to hold more inventory. Next slide, please. And this is just a slide that shows you how our fall farmers market on our quad ended. you'll see that over 800 pounds of produce was distributed, and see some of the items that were on the menu. Next slide, please. Okay, so we could ask this question often about how you might be able to help and contribute. This is a picture of the document that I'll ensure the foundation has to distribute if you're just interested in knowing how can a small or large donation directly help our students. And you'll see there that we have amounts from $100 to $150 that can help our students access some of their technology needs, all the way up to multi-$1,000, which can help support a student's housing and food for the year. Next slide, please. And so that's where I will leave us. And I'm sure that there are some questions and comments that folks will have for us at the end of our time today. Thank you. And so up next, we're going to have Andrea, who's going to introduce Jack's video and talk a little bit more about what was done.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Jackie. I can't express enough how important the work that you do and that Roadie Outpost does is to our school and our community. So as Jackie said, I'm Andrea Heineman, and I am also a URI Parent Council member as a parent to 2 young men who are in the engineering program. When my dear friend Mary Gervais introduced me to the Parent Council, Jenny Demeter was wonderful, and she gave me the opportunity to reflect on how I could perhaps contribute, where I saw myself. And my first thought was to build upon what our younger son had begun. Jack began and introduced us to Roadie Outpost through his Eagle Scout project, which was in 2019. And at that time, not many people were talking about food insecurity and basic needs insecurity. And so we were bringing awareness to the community then. And since then, that awareness has grown and the need has grown. And so at this point, I will let Jenny share Jack's testimonial video, and then I'll follow up with you after that.
I'm Jack Heineman, and I'm a sophomore civil engineering student at URI. Thank you for including me in this important discussion. I am also an Eagle Scout with Troop 138, West Kingston, Rhode Island. It is through my Eagle Scout project in 2020 that I became aware of the basic needs insecurity at URI and across the nation. My Eagle Scout project was to build a large food receptacle for Roadie Outpost to accept more donations. It is my hope to spread awareness to more students on how they can come together as a community to help out. Join us for our information sharing event on campus on Earth Day, Friday, April 22nd. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jenny. So Jack's Eagle Scout project was to actually build a much larger receptacle for Roadie Outpost to receive more goods for the outpost. And when we my husband and I came to the Parent Council, we thought this was a great place where we could still spread awareness and do more work. So on Friday, April 22nd, we will be hosting an on-campus event led by Jack as the student representative and by me as the Parent Council member. And it's called Share a Swipe for Hope, Students Helping Students. And that's on Friday, Earth Day, April 22nd, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We're going to have several tables across campus. We're going to have QR codes for people to come by, and so that they can connect and get more information on basic needs insecurity, see how they can share a meal, and see how they can make a difference. We will also hope that in doing this, we engage more people. And I want to say that Jenny Demeter and Matt Dallaire in the URI Foundation and alumni family engagement, that the work they do is outstanding and it is unsurpassed. It is fine and just a very important work. And I can't thank them enough for their support in our endeavor in spreading awareness, but also just how impressed and inspired I am by the work they do. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be involved in this way, and that we hope that we can continue this way, and we hope to see you on April 22nd. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andrea. And I love all of the work that Jack has done with the food insecurity, and all of your work with him getting the Share a Swipe for Hope. Is just an amazing initiative. What we're going to do now is, Jackie, I really don't know if there are any questions. If folks, you do have questions, Jackie will answer them.
Jackie, this is Jenny Demeter, and I'm looking at our chat here today, and we have a question, I believe from an alum, and he says, will there be any more detail on the Students First Fund? Jackie, I know you can share some more detail and examples if you wouldn't mind sharing that, or typing into the chat where to find more information. And after that, I have another question about graduate school when you're finished.
Sure, absolutely. In terms of the Student First Fund, I'll first start off by saying information about how to donate specifically is on the foundation website, and I'm hoping either Jenny or John can drop that link in the chat for folks. But I will also speak a little bit more directly to the ways in which Student First Fund has been helping students, and I'll speak to this year, or certainly over the course of the pandemic. Our largest expense from Student First Fund tends to happen over the summer, and that's taking a look at students that don't have adequate housing. As you all know, while there are jobs that are out there for students to find, depending on their status, the students are working. They might be working 20, 30, 40. I have some students who are working 60 and 70 hours, but given the rising cost in rent and looking for things in this area, affording on-campus housing, those sorts of things, they're just not making enough money to cover their housing expenses as well as accessing food. So last summer, we spent roughly $40,000 ensuring that our undergraduate and graduate students who don't have adequate access to housing in the summer months had a place to live. We also every year take about $20,000 to $30,000 in a partnership with dining, and we roll money over so that way anytime that a student is hungry, whether that's just because they're waiting for their next paycheck or that something has happened, we're able to give students swipes immediately. So that's either through the Share a Swipe for Hope campaign, where students are directly donating their unused dining dollars or their unused guest swipes, or where we're creating meal plans for students. We often help students get home if they've had a sudden loss and can't afford either a train ticket or something like that to go home, as well as helping students keep their utilities on as well. So they're just some examples of what we've been doing throughout the pandemic to help students have access to some of their basic needs, in addition to textbooks and things like that that continue to come up each year. I hope that answers the question. Absolutely.
It does. And if you can also expand on how parents or community can make contributions to the Roadie Outpost product donations.
Yes, absolutely. So on the Roadie Outpost website, which if you just search URI Roadie Outpost, RHODY, you will see an active updated list of all of the things that we need at the food pantry. I will say, though, that I'm very happy that our community is very generous in terms of adequately providing the foods and the non-food staples that we generally need for our community. For parents who are looking, or parents or alumni who are looking to support, I would say if you don't want to donate money directly, gift cards are also a very helpful way to help our students, because it allows us to assist them even when they're going perhaps back home for breaks, if they're going back home. So we can turn a gift card into things that are local shops for them, but also it's a way for us to supplement what students have. So Walmart, which is a frequent request, we're able to turn Amazon gift cards into almost any grocery store. Those things are very helpful as well. And on that website for Roadie Outpost, it also shows you directly where those gift cards can be mailed or you can contact my office directly as well.
Thank you, Jackie. And I don't see any other questions in the chat, but we'll give it another few a minute or so. And if we don't see any come through, then we can advance to closing. Oh, here's one from Michael Murphy. Can you talk a little bit about how the student body is made aware of these services? Are these services offered to students prior to them joining the URI community?
Excellent question. And thank you for that. So these services, I'm going to start with the second half of the question. In order to qualify for these services, you must be an active student of the URI community. So that means that you are accepted and that you are registered for classes, okay? And so in the example asked below, if a student decides not to come to URI because they're worried about paying for services, I really appreciate this question. I'm going to answer it from my office's vantage point. It is challenging when we have students who are coming in and who are starting off saying that they have unmet need. When that happens, the family or the student should work very closely with enrollment services to get a solid picture of what their financial contributions to this institution are going to look like. And if there is unmet need, it is the financial aid office who can help students determine, is this the right place for them to come at this point in time? Each year, it breaks my heart that we have some students who unfortunately aren't going to be able to start off at URI because they can't afford the expense up front. But it is the case that part of being financially literate is understanding not only your upfront costs, but what it's going to cost for you to remain at this institution. We certainly don't want students coming for one semester and then realizing in the middle of it that they can't afford to be here. So there are some scholarships specifically within financial aid that are meant to help the sort of student who's struggling to meet their needs up front. When we're talking about Student First Fund, we're supporting students that are already matriculating and who've already, perhaps they had some sort of emergency come up where they're no longer able to afford their costs. And I hope that that answers that question. You're welcome.
And Jackie, just for clarification, can students donate swipes throughout the year? And how can they do that, either at a dining hall or through an app?
Great question. So yes, students can donate currently, so we're switching sort of how the meal plans work. So through the rest of this year, students are able to donate their guest meals. And the way that they do that, they can either go through the Grubhub app, and there are specific instructions on how to do that on the Share Swipe for Hope / Roadie Outpost website. They can also walk into any dining facility and say that they want to donate their swipes. They can also go into the first floor of the Memorial Union, which is where the dining services area is, where they can add money to their RAM card, and they're able to donate there as well. For the new system, students will be able to donate their dining dollars, and dining dollars are just a shift from the guest swipe system. They will be able to donate a certain number of those dining dollars per week based on the meal plan that they have. But I want to be clear, so the students who donated swipes up to this point, they will expire at commencement. However, for today and Friday's campaigns, anything that's being donated, dining is switching those donations over to dining dollars so that students will be able to utilize them throughout the summer as well as going into the fall semester.
Thank you, Jackie. And it doesn't look like we have any other comments in the chat. And so I will advance to the next slide for Mary.
So here we are, everyone, back to the Parent Council. It is a wonderful organization, and really it's leading with parental involvement. As you can see, Andrea found something that was near and dear to her heart, and she's been innovating with Jack, and they're just running with it. So if there's, you would like to get involved, you can find something that is in your area of interest. It's really based on your availability, and you're really investing in the students and URI's future. If you have any questions, please reach out to Jenny. Her email's below, along with her phone number. And with that, I would just like to thank each and every one of you for coming to today's webinar. Jackie, the information has been incredible. Andrea, thank you for your initiative with Jack. And I also want to thank the URI staff, Jenny, Matt, and John, for putting this all together along with Jackie and Andrea. So thank you, everyone. And there will be a recording available. This is a great thing to share with others. Have a wonderful day.